doing? Welcome back to the channel. Well, you guys have spoken. There was enough of you wanted to see another hot rod Homelite. If you missed the last one I done, I'll put it up on an end screen. It'll pop up, I don't know, the last minute or so of the video. Don't skip and go to that. Watch this through and then watch that, because it will mess up how the algorithm pushes these videos out to people. And if you don't mind giving us a thumbs up and watching the video all the way to the end. Believe it or not, if you open someone's video, watch a little bit of it and back out, it really hurts the performance of that video. But with all that said, if you haven't, give us a follow, turn on the notifications bell. We appreciate each and every view we get, each and every comment we get, and really appreciate the thumbs ups. Kind of keeps me motivated to do this. With all that said, I've came up with enough here, I think, to put together a pretty good saw we can play around with. So with that said, I'll get you guys off of me and give you a look at what's going on. Alright guys, what we have here is it's kind of a hodgepodge of a couple different saws. I'd shown 3 saws in the short clip. One of you guys was right. I hadn't even paid attention. Well, he was kind of right. One of those saws ended up just being, and it was actually a Super XL12, which means it would have had this same cylinder, but was not an automatic, did not have the auto oiler. I think that saw has the muffler cover that we're wanting to use on it, so I'm still going to have to get some parts off of that, but I originally was only going to use one saw to do this, but the cylinder on that one saw had a bolt broke off here. I couldn't get a nut to weld to it. There just wasn't enough of it there, and didn't really want to sit and fight with it for half of the day trying to get a bolt out. So tore down another saw, and the bottom end of that other saw ended up being not so good, so we ended up with the piston and crankcase from saw number 1 and a pretty nice cylinder from saw number 2. But I do have that other cylinder, and it did make right around 150 psi, but had a muffler bolt broke off, which I don't think would have really made or broke it. You do have that third one, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So with that said, you normally cannot do much, if any, machine work to these because of Freeport issues, but we're gonna kind of throw reliability and idle quality and all of that nonsense out the window here, and we want to jack the compression up on it. With the base gasket pulled, these things will generally make 155, 160 if it's like a fresh set of rings or something. I know somebody's gonna say, well, I've got one that made higher. That's fine. Squish varies on these things from 60 thousandths up over 100 thousandths, and I've got 2 or 3 different sizes of solder. This first one I think is around 60 thou, 58, 60 thou or something. That's what we're going to do here. I've got the saw case mounted up in a vise that I keep here under my bench when I'm touching up a chain or something, not using the grinder. And these do have a really narrow squish band. I mean, it's probably as thin, if you can even call it a squish band, it's probably as thin as that piece of solder going around the cylinder. So we want to make sure we're all the way against the back of the cylinder. And we're not even going to touch that 60 thou. It's just not even close to it. If it's all you have, I suppose you can probably double that up, but go to your local hardware store. Any of them's going to have it. That's plumbing solder. Another was silver solder, meant to weld or solder really mild steel, mild metals. That particular one doesn't work very well. Could just be the user or operator, I guess. But this stuff measures around 120 thousandths, I think. So maybe it's 100 thou. I did have one here to where that solder wasn't even thick enough. And what was funny, this older saw I don't know, I'm not going to zoom in. Let's see, we're on the clutch side anyway, but the other side, this was actually a Super XL automatic, but it was a points saw. Has the eccentric on the crankshaft. The other saw I tore down was actually electronic ignition, which I hope is good, which is what we'll go back with, but if not, I did verify that both saws would pop over on a prime, so even the old XL12 would. Yeah, this is going to be really loose. We want to get a good mash on that. That's crazy. I'm going to guess this thing's probably got ups to like 88, 90 thousandths, which is a lot. And what's crazy is this saw had the really thick base gasket that you see on most of these, and that newer saw with the electronic ignition had a really thin base gasket, which is what the cylinder came off of. And the pistons, you know, they appeared to be virtually the same size, same crown height, same skirt length. Alrighty guys, I measured these ports in duration, or in exhaust duration, and blow down number, if that makes sense. Like, we got exactly 150 degrees total open time on the exhaust port, meaning that exhaust port opens, and I did verify that, at 105 degrees. Normally this degree finder, you'll set it up on the intake port, zero it out there, it's a done deal, but we had to zero out on the exhaust port, so I just measured from open to close on the exhaust port, got my number. Transfers open exactly 15 degrees later, which is about dead spot on from the last one of these I done. Alright guys, so where we started out with before we went to doing any machine work, and I tried to video some machine work, but evidently we got about 2 seconds and the camera said it was going to quit. I don't know, that's weird. Normally does not do that. I can sit and run my jaw for 30 minutes before it'll loop and start another clip usually, but we started with this. Maybe it'll focus, maybe not. Thick stuff, like 120 thou plumbing solder. Here's where we're at now. Measuring it with that solder, which is 61 thou I think. I got 31 thou squish last night before I had to pack up and head out of here. Leave out of here. Go 30 feet to the house. But now we're able to squish this, which is 31 thou electrical solder. I just decided to test it with that this morning, and it is squishing it at least a little bit down to 28 thou. So we've went from, with the 31 thousandths base gasket, it would have had over 110 thousandths squish down to 28 thousandths squish with the gasket back in. So that means we took a bunch off of the base. Without the base gasket, we had like 105, 120 on the numbers. Squish was like 80 something thousandths, maybe 90. Refer back to the beginning of the video. Like I said, it really didn't matter because we wasn't going to leave it there. Right now we're looking at 111, 126 on the transfers. So with zero free port, the reason I'd stuck the gasket in was when I dialed the squish down to, let's say, 20 thousandths. Without the base gasket, I had about 10 thousandths of free port under the pistons, so I decided to chuck the cylinder back up in the lathe machine a little more off to where I could slip the gasket in and drop about 10-15 thou down below the exhaust port. So right now those numbers are with no free port. We shouldn't have any tuning issues. My only concern is the connecting rod and the flywheel side bearing. It is a needle cage bearing, but it's a pretty good sized bearing. It's somewhat larger than what would be like in a 200T, but the same design, so maybe it's okay with high RPMs, maybe it's not. The other saw I have, I think, will tack around 12.5 free spin. It seems okay. I've not put a lot of time on it. You know, you may cut a load of wood and it pop. I don't know. I've only played around with it here at the house, but the end goal is maybe to take this one out into the woods. So I'm pondering on numbers. I'm tempted to throw something that I would throw kind of at a more modern saw, like say from the factory. I'm assuming this thing with that big base gasket had like a 102.5, 103 roof. What were they rated to turn? 10.5 free rev or something, and then the older ones maybe 8,500. Could be wrong on that, but I guess it would all be who's got a hold of the screwdriver, I guess. But kind of leaning more toward I'm leaning toward 100 roof, leaving the uppers where they're at and throwing 2 finger ports in it to get the extra transfer duration it needs. Then another part of me is wanting to go like, you know, 100, 120, and then there's the machine base. If you've not looked at one of these transfer port design, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'll probably put a ring in it and see how high I think I need to raise the exhaust port, but we're talking, you know, cutting 100 thou out of it, so I'm thinking going in, and you might see how that transitions down as going in and knocking all that down flat, and just see them where it lands us at. I'm willing to bet it's going to be close. And there's a lot of room in these. Usually people slip finger ports in over here next to the transfers because the locating pins right somewhere right in here, not quite in the middle, but there's a lot of room to play in there. So I don't know, guys. Once I figure something out, I'll bring you back and give you a look. I'm not going to try to video any of it, but we do have videos of me grinding on stuff on the channel, but for sake of length of this video, we're going to try to get something done here. Guys, I've got done what I'm going to do to the cylinder. Gasket matched the lowers. I went in and did knock the plating back off the transfers themselves and kind of blended everything back in where I'd opened up the lowers. And of course we raised the uppers to our desired timing number I was going for. Exhaust roof, if you'll remember, the roof of that normally looks like the floor. I was able to knock every bit of that out and clean it up, blend it in. Didn't lay a real crazy polish on it. It's kind of discolored due to running it through the ultrasonic. It just does that, but should do really good, I think. Did widen the exhaust ports, I guess you could say. What little you can. Ain't a lot you can do, but you can widen them a little bit. And blended everything in, put a nice chamfer, bevel, whatever you want to call it, back on everything. And I'm choosing to stick with the rings that came out of it originally, because it made 148 psi with over 110,000 squish. So I did take a little bit of sandpaper to them, scuff them up, and I did run a ball home through the cylinder, so we should get a real nice grab on that. Should have a real nice thump, should turn some good RPMs. We'll just have to see. Guys, I got it together enough to check compression. Got 175 psi, that's dry. I didn't lube the cylinder or anything, or pump the crankcase full of oil. Dry cranking compression, and once those rings seat to that cylinder, that's not the original cylinder that the rings came out of. It'll probably pick up 10-15 psi, maybe more. We'll just have to see, but that should be pretty dang sporty there. Final numbers on it, 28,000 squish. Right at 100 on the exhaust roof, and like 120, 121 on the uppers. I'm going to call it 120, so she's building some compression. Alrighty guys, it is the next day. It's been a few days since starting this project. Honestly, probably better part of a week. I have had the saw running. There's a clip before this. I probably showed of it running, sitting on my little test stand. It sounded pretty good. And the compression we checked was just putting the saw together, no oil or anything in it, but it is pumped up. I'd say she's easily 200, north of 200 now. I knew it would when those rings seated back into that cylinder. So we took rings and a piston basically and put a different cylinder from another saw on it. So it's got to mesh back in. Things got to file back in and seat back in, but I've made a handful of cuts. This chain I've got on it, I need to get some 70 drive link chains. It's basically the same chain like a 1010 would use with a 20-inch bar to 70 driver, 3/8 50 gauge. This one, for some reason or another, has had the drags about ground off of it. I don't know what I was thinking or doing, but and then again, in about 10 inches of locust, which I've already cut up, it was not phasing this saw. Unfortunately, I did have to put the points back in it. Something about the electronic with this bottom end was just not, it was just not going together, which I kind of had thoughts of that anyway. So I pulled it back down, put the points set up back in it. I'm thinking maybe I could have used the flywheel from the points with the electronic coil and it would have worked. And there are some things you can do with later model coils we might look into in the future, but it kind of acted like timing on it was way too lazy to even start. Or way too advanced. If you pulled it over hard enough and fast enough, it would kind of try to pop, but when I put the points, coil, and flywheel back on it, it started like second pull, so something to look into. There's lots and lots of different ignition setups on these saws, and most people know that. What we done for a carburetor. This was laying here readily available. I do maybe plan on finding an actual Tillotson HS. This is an aftermarket Husky 272 XP carburetor. I did have to drill out the carb box to bring the line in from the side. Yes, I could have just changed out the fitting in the carburetor, but it was super easy just to drill another hole. You do have to drill a hole here to get your idle adjustment on the carburetor, and then your access port for your adjustment screws is the same. But yes, I understand if I got this out, it's gonna suck fines in it, but this out. The fuel is boiling in this thing. I talked to Simple Man. He said that it was normal that they do that. They ran a lot of them years ago. Alright guys, I need to wrap this up. So far, I think it's going to be pretty good. Things I think will help tremendously. We need to get a pipe built and put on that to help get some of the heat out of that thing. It may also help with scavenging. Need to take that Chinese carburetor off of it, throw it in a junk pile is where it belongs. Maybe a reed valve upgrade. I don't know, maybe a reed cage off of a larger saw or something, or look into something aftermarket or something. Because it is getting a little bit of spit back still yet, so they seemed okay. They were the best set out of the 3 sets I had here, but you know, they never were intended toward high performance, I don't think, if that makes sense. I think the ignition's fine on it. I think we need to get the other issues lined out first, and you know, it's only going to improve. But that piece of wood, what is it, 8 inches, maybe 10 when we started, I don't know, I'm not going to measure, was like cutting a freaking piece of cement. That's something I really need to split and put in the woodshed instead of cutting cookies on anyway. That chain, stupid aggressive, but what little we did get to cut in that big piece of poplar, saw seemed like it wanted to just get down and throw some chips, but unfortunately, like I shown in the video, she's getting really hot, and I'd beat on that thing for a better part of 20-25 minutes, let it sit and idle for a few minutes on the ground, hoping that would cool it off a little. But we know the cooling system on those saws are horrible anyway. But just little things that might help, you know, better chain, better carburetor, building a pipe for it. I think the ignition's fine for now. Maybe we can save that for something at the very end, but we have a good base to build off of in future videos is what I'm getting at. So, till the next one, guys, thank y'all for watching. Thanks for all your support. If you ain't give us a thumbs up, I'll try to put something here somewhere for y'all to watch. Y'all have a good one.